Hello, passengers, and welcome aboard the TV Pilot's License with service to your local murder house. We ask that you please fasten your headphones, secure your podcasting device, and remember that if someone tells you you are going to die on this flight before entering the plane, that's just Addie. Don't mind her. She says that all the time. Welcome to the TV Pilot's License. My name is Geoff Kerbis, joined by Max Singer and Rich Inman. How you boys doing today?
Oh, I am fantastic, Jeff. We are in what is clearly Pasadena, America's suburbs. Super easy flight for me today.
Rich, how about yourself, bud?
Well, I personally woke up to a tweet by John Carpenter this morning asking what Letterboxd is, so it's officially fall. Let's get into it.
Oh my God. Well, boys, this week we are discussing a little bit of a spooky show, getting into our spooky season, talking about the first season of American Horror Stories, aka Murder House. Before we dive too deep into this spooky sensation, Max, do you mind telling folks what the show is all about?
Yeah, regular or spooky voice?
Oh, spooky voice, spooky voice, spooky voice.
Here at TV Pilot's License, we break down and analyze the pilots of some of TV's most famous, or in some cases, infamous shows. We learn a little bit more about how these shows came to be and were originally made. If they're effective pilot episodes and make us want to watch more, and if we think they'd be made today, go back and scream our old episodes from wherever you listen to podcasts. Check us out on YouTube and TikTok to see our smiling faces. And if it is your first time flying with us, then welcome aboard.
Oh my God. I'm not going to lie, Rich.
There's a monster on the wing.
When I heard the whirring sound, I was just like, oh, wow, Max is doing such a good job that I'm imagining whirring in my mind. But Rich, what is your question of the week this week?
Well, obviously, now that we're in fall, it's time to start planning out your Halloween costumes. And obviously, my best ideas always come around November 1st, and then I forget them. So I want to know if there's any Halloween costume that you guys did that was memorable or your favorite.
Well, I'll kick us off. I believe I was 10 years old. So it's been 23 years of just shit since then. But I did a headless horseman costume.
Which
was
bold
dope
for a 10-year-old.
Yeah, and what I did was I got this like blow up attachment to go on my shoulders and give the essence of like actual shoulders on top, with like a larger suit. So it was a big fucking
I like
hit.
this. Yeah.
It was really dope. And like it is a costume that like, yeah, everyone wants to be Darth Vader. Everyone wants to, dress up like a vampire. I was like, you know what would be really funny? Not having a head.
Darth Vader's too easy. It's a big cape, big polyurethane cape, and a plastic mask. That's a $4 Spirit Halloween purchase at most.
Max, what about yourself?
Oh, well, if you get the Spirit Halloween version, it's Evil Space Lord.
It just says James Earl Jones on it.
Oh my God. R.I.P. Max, what about yourself?
1 year out in Los Angeles, I went as Captain Chelsea Sullenberger, a.k.a. Sully Sullenberger himself, and I got a pilot's outfit and a bag of bird feathers and a fake mustache off the internet, and I glued bird feathers all over myself. And there used to be a bar in West Hollywood that was called the Hudson, and we went there for drinks. So I was Captain Sully in the Hudson.
Oh my God!
I wanted to do a recording at the Aviation Theme Bar in West Hollywood. I don't know if it's still there. Is it now boarding?
Oh, I don't think that's there anymore, man.
Oh, damn. All right.
We can still record there. It just might be something else.
The airline industry is crumbling.
It's just a Barry's Boot Camp now, and we're recording a podcast.
It's all Barry's Boot Camps.
Always has been.
Rich, what about yourself?
So this is when I was living in New York. I had a idea to do I bought like a mechanic's outfit. It was like kind of like a onesie, just like, kind of oil, whatever you envision, name tag, etc. And then I threw on some butterfly wings, and I was the Staten Island Ferry.
That's so dumb.
But that one got a lot of questions and then a lot of like, oh, and then they walked away.
Oh my god!
And then Pete Davidson and Colin Jost bought him.
Yeah, I'm doing the show live from their basement right now.
Oh my god! Well, Rich, thank you so much for your question of the week. Let's talk a little bit more about American Horror Stories, and American Horror Story. And before we dive in too deep, a quick synopsis: an anthology series centering on different characters and locations, showcasing different aspects of horror. I love how this synopsis basically is just a description of what an anthology series is, and then they're like, "Oops, we need to add horror." Like,
yeah, wait. Did you just look up the Google AI description of the show?
No, this is the official IMDb synopsis of this show. So, Max, tell us a little bit more about how this show got made.
Today, we are talking about the pilot of American Horror Story, which originally aired on October 5th, 2011 on FX. And we're talking about No Strangers to TV PL today with Ryan Murphy and Brad Falchuk. Murphy and Falchuk are the driving force behind previous episodes of ours with Glee and Scream Queens and 911. Forgot about that one in my notes. Despite premiering a few years after the debut of Glee, the origins of American Horror Story began before Glee even went into production. Going off of Nip Tuck, Murphy knew he wanted his next project to be more challenging and dark. Both Murphy and Falchuk were longtime horror fans and wanted to create a series whose primary goal was to scare viewers, an idea seen for decades on film, but less common on broadcast TV. Inspiration came to Murphy's childhood and memories of his grandma forcing him to watch the show Dark Shadows in an attempt to toughen him up.
Jesus.
Vintage horror of the 70s, including Rosemary's Baby, The Shining, Don't Look Now, and the Amityville Horror are all listed as influences on today's show. They pitch FX on an anthology concept from the get-go, that each season would tell a different story from the beginning. FX orders a pilot in February of 2011 for a possible series, with the duo sharing writing duties and Murphy set to direct. Production began in April, and shooting happened in late May, with the series getting a series order of 13 episodes in July. I cannot stress enough what a tight turnaround AHS's creation is. Murphy and Falchuk actually couldn't begin work on the AHS pilot until finishing production on the concurrently happening season of Glee. Production picked up 2 weeks after it was given a series order to ensure it would even make its premiere date.
Holy shit.
Today's pilot's a little cool because it's the only episode filmed in the actual house that we see, a historic Tudor previously serving as a Covenant in the Country Club Park neighborhood of Los Angeles. For the remainder of the show, the house is recreated as various sets on the lot. Less interesting.
You're right.
Oh my gosh. Well, Max, thank you so much for that history of the show. And
did
how
your
it
notes
got
really
made.
end with the phrase less interesting?
I needed it out.
that is most of my notes in school, where I was just like, oh, that's a fun fact. Less interesting fact. Greater
Now,
fact.
I have to know too, because this is now you said it was our 4th Ryan Murphy show, right?
It
Fourth
is
Murphy.
our 4th Murphy.
And we are gonna do more. That's the crazy thing.
Statistically, yes.
Do we think Ryan Murphy has the John Legend thing where he just overbooks himself because he doesn't want to be home?
I don't know if the man sleeps,
It
in all
is
honesty.
insane how many yeses this man gets. It is,
And-
I mean, deservedly so. His shows are great. People love them. They are controversial. They are wild. They are well produced. It is crazy how I can't imagine. I can't think of another single person who has this many yeses to their name.
Well, and you're talking about this, Rich, and literally yesterday, for the folks who are listening to this podcast, 8 days ago for you, yesterday for us, Dr. Odyssey just came out on Fox, and that's another Ryan Murphy
The
show.
same day that Grotesquerie premiered on FX. He had 2 shows.
And I just started watching Monsters, the Menendez brothers story. So he has 4 concurrent shows right now.
And he also has an American sports story, Aaron Hernandez, going. All of these things
Oh
are
my God,
happening
that's right.
simultaneously.
Wait,
And
so
Donna Kelsey likes all of those shows more than she likes Grotesquerie.
it is a little weird to have a show that is like talking about the horrors and like the like evident CTE that Aaron Hernandez had while
Don't talk about Dr. Odyssey like that.
Yeah,
while actively casting Travis Kelce in another show. That's like, that seems odd to me. No?
well, we'll talk about that another episode.
Three famous football shows. We have that. We have Grotesquerie. We have Aaron Hernandez, and we have the OJ show.
I thought you were going to say three famous tight ends: Aaron Hernandez, Travis Kelce, and Don Johnson's little bug.
You leave Nash Bridges alone.
Well, let's talk a little bit more. Happy spooky episode, everyone. Let's talk a little bit more about this show and talk a little bit more about American Horror Story. And we kick off knowing exactly what year it is and an idea of what is happening, because it's 1978, baby. There are two children dressed in stripes, and there is a creepy as hell woman/girl sitting in front of the house telling people that they're going to get murdered if they go into that house. And I need to know and check what were the vibes from everyone here as we take this deep dive in our cold open.
I got 3 words for you. We got bats. That was a truly like, you could kind of see the trope of this coming almost immediately, of just like, all right, spooky house on the corner. This is like, you don't go in there. There's weird shit happening. There is a little girl, like an ominous little girl. It's hitting a lot of tropes of scary movies immediately. It's the don't go in there, throwing popcorn at the screen moment.
No one's ever captured preteen angst on film better than Ryan Murphy having these bratty little preteen twins just yell, "I hate trees."
I mean, there was a couple of my notes in here I think are interesting now looking back at them. Like, one, we see a ton of bones, and I just say, bones, so many bones. Is this Bones? Am I watching the show Bones?
Almost. If you say Bones one more time, we owe them money.
But then I think that what I find really interesting is, although this is like that tongue-in-cheek, like 70s, 80s horror theme, this is probably the least creepy, scary part of this episode, at least to me, in the idea that it is very much like, like this is where we see the origin story, and we love an origin story for people getting murdered.
I think it's important for giving the audience a sense of what the tone is going to be of this and how it's going to be filmed. It. You get a lot of tracking shots. You get a lot of camera angles from distances and kind of odd directions. There's some sort of like turning of the camera there, some weird slant angles. You start to see like the first little like hiccups in the footage a little bit as well. There's like odd little skips that just feel a little uneasy overall. And I think as the first of 2 cold opens we essentially get on this episode, this one is less about our story and more about just, hey, here's what we're doing, and we're going to ease you into this with this sort of like non-focused A-plot bit. In
addition to that tone, because like right on the nose, like I think it has a very unique camera, like it just makes like great camera choices. You also get an understanding that yes, this is going to be horror, but this does have an element of camp to it, because like those 2 kids got the dumbest lines like possible. This is going to be a, like, I don't know. It's a lot of people tempting fate. It's clearly like, we're going to send these 2 kids in. Immediately they're going to die. It's like, there's no suspense there. It's like, are they going to make it out of this house?
They
like,
literally
of course
tell
not.
us. They literally tell us you're going to die if you go in there. And we as the audience do a good job in believing them that they're going to die. Talking about ways of telling someone something that might be considered rude if taken out of context, what do we think about Connie Britton's scene in which a doctor tells her that she is a decaying house of a human being?
Boy.
Because holy shit, does this give us that small little peek into the idea that not everything's right in Connie Britton's life? There was a tragedy, then to only see her in all of her greatness and acting go into a room in her own house thinking that and like it's almost one of those things. And I was watching this with my partner and she was like, oh, this is like a prelude to 911 where Connie Britton is a 911 operator, but Connie Britton's doing a terrible job of being a 911 responder in the sense that she is going in the house with a knife.
Ryan Murphy has a short and sweet iPhone contact list, and he uses the absolute fuck out of it, and I love it.
Bex, what did you think about our home intruder scene that we got?
Well, first off, Connie Britton, look at your medical network. Find the new OB. This guy is a 100%.
Dick. Yeah, he sucks.
It's LA. She's in Kaiser. There's no choices.
I mean, yes, for TV purposes, if you hear noises in your home and you believe it's an intruder, you are legally required to go upstairs with a knife.
Yeah.
You cannot play this with normal convictions the way we would handle it. But I think, the real horror story is Dylan McDermott having an affair upstairs in their family home. I mean, we're all dealing with horrors in different ways.
That's right. I also like from this scene too, actually this scene and the intro where the little kids are in the house and everything. They explore this basement that's full of like body parts and like fetuses and formaldehyde and stuff like that. Regular spooky basement shit. You get the theme immediately that, oh, this is actually going to be not just like a horror story, but it has a overarching theme of infertility and women aging. So you get that as you automatically know that, oh, this is what this season is going to be about. I mean, yes, that is like a little bit through the lens of how they run other seasons of American Horror Story, but you can start to see like the early formulations of what's going to eventually happen.
So let's dive a little bit more into the next. We get this wild, crazy intro sequence. And then we have our next horror, which is LA traffic. No, in all honesty, we are looking at purchasing a house in LA, which is a horror in itself. No, I'll be absolutely honest.
On that, Geoff, just really quick. Look, I don't care how many murders happened in this house. If I could get a historic Tudor at this price deal that they're getting, the bodies can still be in the home. I gotta take
Max.
it. I gotta take it.
Max, just rent.
I was actually going to ask this. It's literally marked in bold in my notes of like, you find out, and for our audience, we find out that this family has moved across the country to start a new life after presumably the whole cheating and going through therapy and realizing that they need to start fresh, which is, we'll take it or leave it as far as how good of therapist advice that is. The part that I find so interesting, though, is they find this beautiful house that's obviously been redone. And then the realtor, who has had a history of selling this same exact house multiple times, gigantic red flag number one.
You would think.
Is legally required to say, hey, the previous couple that lived here died in here. It was a murder-suicide. And would you still have any interest in buying that home? Because I'm sort of on the edge. Like, I know I've talked to you two about how hard it is to get a house in LA, and I'm like, that's a pretty damn nice looking house.
What is the mortgage payment?
I mean, personally, I'm going absolutely not. And this is coming from someone who actively currently lives in a house where the previous tenant did pass away in it. It was, that was like an old age, wanted to die at home kind of situation. You are not legally required as a realtor, I'm pretty sure, to disclose if you don't die from a crime in the home. Yeah,
correct.
But if you are murdered in the house, and I don't know, it seems like they could have hammed it up a little bit about how stupid of a decision this could be regardless. And contextually, Dylan McDermott cheated with one of his students as a professor, I guess.
Yeah.
Inside the home, which is exceptionally stupid. Dylan McDermott's character is a therapist. And yeah, I mean, I'm not buying this. I think it would be a fascinating home to spend 3 minutes of an open house in. Um, but yeah, I think that's got. I'm not a very superstitious guy, but I'm I'm a little stitious. And
I have another beef though in this home buying scene, which is with Violet the daughter just saying, "We'll take it."
Oh,
you
absolutely.
don't get to make
no,
that
shut
call.
the fuck up.
You don't get to make that call. This is a decision that involves hundreds of thousands of dollars of your parents' money, and you don't get to just swoop on in here and say, "We'll take it."
Yeah,
No,
Violet,
get a large purchases fund, get a savings account, work, and then you can make the call of what home you're going to buy.
Violet, you better be busting your ass in the Nickelodeon lot if you're going to talk like that.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about Violet, because we get the sense immediately that Violet is a little bit of a character in the sense of she's probably dealt with a lot of trauma from her parents' relationship, it seems like, and the ordeal of losing a potential sibling due to a miscarriage, which we find out about later in this pilot. But her way of, like, the way that they film Violet is so different than how they film the rest of this, specifically in the high school scenes that we get.
Yeah.
They're very, very, if you just cut those out and did that as an entirely separate pilot, I'd be like, cool, we're in an LA high school that people just are terrible to each other in. And
this is like the most violent. This is like the San Quentin High School of Los Angeles or something like that. It is exceptionally violent from the jump.
This is the part of the pilot where, like, every Ryan Murphy show that we have done, there is a line that you hear or you see where you're like, oh, this is a Ryan Murphy show.
Can I guess? Is it coke off of nipples?
That it definitely is on my list of fun ones. But it was the girl saying she's super sensitive about cigarettes since her grandma died of lung cancer. And then she says you have to eat the cigarette. And I was just like, what in the world are we doing right now? Like, this is wild. To get spit in the face, which is, a great way to run away.
Fox News has done irreparable damage to this country, and I know Ryan Murphy is from Indiana, and I know that he thinks that this is what Los Angeles is really like. But I promise the blue states are not violent, lawless places.
Look, I got an issue with these teens in these high schools getting mad at Violet. They tell her that she can't even smoke cigarettes anymore because of smoke.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about another horrifying presence.
Dylan McDermott's hat?
That's
because that's a real dumb hat he wore on the road trip.
I was actually going to talk about Jessica Lange, who comes into this pilot. And, like, one of the beauties about this show and doing an anthology series is you can have these amazing, like, actors and actresses who are just a presence when they come on screen, and they captivate you and horrify you at the same time. And I love this character of the neighbor who was next door, who didn't make it as a actress, but also is just, everything they say is so condescending yet terrifying.
They gave her a UCB character of an actress that clearly just talks in riddles like a ghost, and let her just eat. She fucking ate the entire scenery. I love Jessica Lange's character in this. It is so batshit crazy.
If you have the chance to get a 2-time Oscar winner in your pilot to just play this off-the-wall Southern debutante meets vaudeville caricature.
Oh, yeah.
And you could get her, you do it. And Jessica Lange is the most interesting part of this episode to me. Every single time she is on screen, she's making such interesting, subtle choices. And I think AHS, and whether or not you get into it, is going to depend on how much you buy in to how over the top, how bombastic, and how much stuff they throw at you for the first 50 minutes of this pilot. And Some people will get really into it. Some people will not. Jessica Lange plays it subdued enough, though, and like just under the surface enough that I am generally interested in everything involving her character. Like everything she does, I want to know more.
I think it's because she speaks in riddles, and you're like, we got to find the answer to these riddles.
So we talked a little bit about how Dylan McDermott's character is a therapist, and we get to see that through the lens of these therapy sessions with a baby-faced Evan Peters. Like we just were talking about Evan Peters. He's in this as well. Ryan Murphy and him are BFFs. It seems like
Ryan Murphy's 20-person iPhone contact list.
And like I really, really like this scene of sort of, yeah, it might be a little bit of like glorifying the concept of therapy and the concept of like these sort of interactions with someone who is very, very obviously mentally unstable. But it is just so unnerving that you're like, I have to keep on watching. I have to keep on hearing it and like getting this peek inside. And it's like, we were talking before we did this about like the concept of true crime and how wild it is that it's so popular, and also how unsettling how popular it is. And this is part of the reason why I think people like it. They want to hear and understand things that don't make sense to them.
We're obsessed with our own dark sides and what it's like a fear of what we're potentially capable of, basically. And it's like the, not to compare it immediately to another Evan Peters role, but it's like the serial killer thing. It's like, oh, something had to have been like evil about them, right? They're not like people. And it's not things that went wrong. It's not like, psychosis from like years of abuse or anything like that. It is like, they have to be evil of some sort, and they're not. It's like, it is, it just plays into that inner curiosity that we all have.
Well, I think because there's a divide between us and like supernatural on screen. We know that there is a distance between us and that. And it's, some people believe in certain things, other people don't. But, if I watch, a wolfman on screen, I don't inherently think that a wolfman is going to terrorize my neighborhood and, kill people in my home. But, Evan Peters' character is the flip side of the quick flash of like the creature that we see do a slash at the cold open, where he's a real horror. He's a real threat. He's a real terror. And he's something that you recognize more in your own life than the freaky supernatural shit we're leading up to. And so we get these different elements of what horror is, and we're going to see how they all connect and how they all collide.
Let's talk about some of the things that sort of start adding up to something's wrong with this house, or there's something wrong with the people that are in this house. Small things like Dylan McDermott being just like sleepwalking around the house. I have a note. I would like to either congratulate Mr. McDermott or his stunt double for the great pair of cheeks, because
so tiny
stuff. They were so tiny yet tight that, keep on doing those squats. They look great.
Look, there's Barry's boot camps as far as the eye can see in Los Angeles. We've already covered that. He's at least 3 of them.
But the thing that I want to focus a little bit more on that I think is interesting is we talked about Jessica Lange and her amazing performance. And there's a very different performance, yet just as important, in Frances Conroy. And the idea of this maid that comes with the house, which I have never heard of before. I am not at that tier of wealth in my life where a house just has staff that comes with it. But while the audience is revealed that the way that Moira is viewed by some people is not how she is viewed by every person in this home, I have to give credit to, I believe the actress's name is Alex Breckenridge, who plays the young version of Moira, because Frances Conroy has a very, very specific vocal pattern that is fairly iconic. She brings it with her on every series of American Horror Story. She does it on shows like Royal Pains. There's a sarcasm to her voice that is very, very much evident. Alex Breckenridge beat for beat matched it. And that is so hard to do and to make it believable. And like that was a part that I was like, wow, what a performance, but also holy shit, that's a terrifying concept of like almost this Two-Face walking around the earth, or at least this house to our knowledge.
Yeah, we're starting to play with POV at this point. We're starting to play with perceptions of reality and how other people, person to person, differently view this character and what they see when they look at her. I think this coinciding with Dylan McDermott's sleepwalking, like, yeah, you are starting to play with what is real, what is reality, like what is happening, what can I believe? And I think that it's an interesting choice to begin to question the narrative and whose narration can you believe, who is going to be reliable and telling you where the story goes.
Right.
And when you question that every single thing could possibly be fabricated and a figment of your imagination, you are setting up that anything goes, like anything could happen, and we have to question whether or not it's true. And that's a strong choice to make, 30 minutes into your pilot episode.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the benefits of and I think like horror TV is not necessarily like a new genre at this point, but it's definitely like I don't think it was really popular all that much until fairly recently. And I think one of the things you have to do if you're going to take a horror element, which is normally confined to like 90 minutes or less, you have to, if you're going to make like, I don't know, 15 episodes out of it or something like that, you have to find a way to just like obfuscate, just like hide the truth for as long as you possibly can, throw more bombs into the script, throw more distractions and everything.
So we have this reveal of Moira. We have this sense of something is very, very wrong in this house. But we also start to see other things that are off, right? We have this reveal of, there's a gimp suit that is just in the attic of this home, hanging there lifelessly. We have the reveal of there's still seemingly these jars and these bones that are in the basement of this home. There's this mural that is demonic in its sense. And we keep on seeing even more reveals. Evan Peters, there's something obviously up with him as he tries to get closer with Violet.
He seems fine.
And then Addie keeps on, there's the Addie of it all. This woman's grown child is seemingly sneaking into the house, just screaming, "You're gonna die," to the owners. And once again, Jessica Lange being amazing and turning on the, in a second with her performance. But I'm curious from you too, at this point of the pilot, before we have we're getting towards the end of those big reveals that we're getting, how bought in are you to the concept of, oh yeah, this is there's some fucked up stuff happening in this house, and it is a longer pilot, it's 50 minutes long. Are you still like, okay, I can keep on watching?
I mean, immediately there's some weird shit happening in this house, and you kind of just like it. I'm gonna throw on the lens of like an actual horror fan. I am not one. If I am a horror fan and I'm watching this, number one, I know that some fucked up shit's going to happen. Number two, I want to see that fucked up shit. Number three, I don't know when that fucked up shit's going to end. Because you have no idea how many episodes this is going to be. It's going to be like a very long thing. You could even be like taking mental notes of like what to remember for future episodes and stuff like that. Because, a show of this type is going to have a ton of Easter eggs. It's going to have a ton of like, oh, do you remember this thing from episode 2? I mean, I would say for a horror fan, it does scratch a lot of those itches.
Max, what about yourself?
I think for me, it's a log fuse attached to a powder keg, and it is a slow burn of that fuse, and we're going to keep layering and layering and layering, and that powder keg is going to go off at some point, and you don't know how long this fuse is. It is a exercise in patience for sure, because we're throwing a lot of information at you that is also getting intersected with little kind of goofy Ryan Murphy isms, Connie Britton kind of begrudgingly saging the house is one of those funny moments. All people in LA are the same. All teenagers are the same, with Violet asking Tate if he wants to listen to Morrissey. A teen is the same in any decade. But you know that something is coming. It's really asking your patience to trust it and get it to its destination.
Also, like, this is Ryan Murphy doing his straight cosplay of saying, "Do you have any Kurt Cobain on that thing?" As if Kurt Cobain had a solo career.
Oh my God. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the putting a bow on how some of our characters end this pilot, right? And we'll start off with Violet in the sense that this character befriends Evan Peters' character to try to figure out how to deal with the school bully.
Mm-hmm.
And we get this initial reveal that something's not right with Evan Peters. We see this demon.
I don't know what you're talking about. He seems
or
fine.
Something. Maybe I'm just seeing things. We see something in this flashing light sequence that is horrifying. The bully gets harmed with a gigantic scratch on her face and runs out in terror. And not only is the bully terrified, Violet's terrified of Evan Peters, who seemingly just sits there. When I was asking, why isn't she kicking him out of the house? No one leads anyone to doors when they're like, please leave, which is a normal thing to do. Everyone's just like, you need to go, and I'm going to leave the room. See yourself fucking out.
That's the most dramatic way to exit a scene. It's like, you know the way out. Yeah, I would say, I think this goes back to the conversation we were actually just having about like the long fuse on a bomb. It is like, whatever you see right now in the next, I just looked it up, there's 12 episodes for this season. In the next 11 episodes, everything you know from this first episode is going to be thrown out the window. So I'm like, yeah, something's definitely wrong with him. Is he a ghost? Is he real? Is he a demon? Is he the ghost of what Connie Britton's fetus was supposed to be, or something like that? Like, it is like, it could be fucking anything. And yeah, I mean, they do a great job. Clearly, I don't think the show has a massive budget for this pilot. It doesn't seem so, at least, but because all of the cutscenes are very like, it's very like original like Blumhouse movies, where it's like, we're going to use found footage, we're going to use every trick in the book to get this movie made for like $200,000, that kind of thing.
Max, what about yourself?
I think for me, at this point, I'm more interested in the, I guess, grounded horrors. Like, I'm more interested in the relationship between Connie Britton and Dylan McDermott, between like Vivian and Ben, than I am a lot of the supernatural. Sure. I am more interested in like the real horror and these two people and the more grounded human elements of this series. I think that their fight scene and the escalation of it going from verbal to physical into intimate is a really interesting progression there. And I think having Connie Britton be like the one person who is not as personally afflicted by the supernatural elements just yet is an interesting choice. To have one character who's a little more tethered to reality is a strong choice here, because it does make me want to follow her more. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit more about that scene. We get a ton of reveals, because this, as much as this is a show about horror, it is, any good horror movie is a development of characters and relationships by the end of it. Sure, like we could talk about how Friday the 13th, there is a man in a hockey mask running around with a machete. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about subtle. This. And I think that it is really interesting seeing the flaws in each of these characters causing this gigantic move into this quote unquote murder house, and seeing how they, sex is used in many, many horror films as a driver of plot and a driver of horror actually happening. And in this instance, once we sort of, we break that glass window and say like, okay, cool, they had sex, everything starts going off the rails immediately afterwards.
Right.
And it becomes that much more interesting.
Because it's the one thing you can't do like physiologically with the fight or flight response activated, basically. So it's like, oh, all right, defenses are down. And it's also like a pulse raising element, I guess.
So let's talk a little bit about some of those things that we see, right? Dylan McDermott continues to be having these sleepwalking adventures, but Jessica Lange appears while my man is just looking at fire. He's just looking at fire from a stove, which after we get some warnings that this is something that afflicts the men who move into this house, very much in the Amityville horror inspiration. But then we also get the return of the gimp suit, which I was not fully expecting, in one of the most wild sex scenes I've ever seen in my damn life. Rich, what were you feeling during that sex scene?
Super uncomfortable. It was like, you're watching a horror show, so Dylan McDermott is not in that gimp suit. Like that is like, you couldn't make it more obvious to anyone but Connie Britton, I guess. But also like, okay, so leading up to this, we have like a pretty major fight about Connie Britton trying to forgive Dylan McDermott for his cheating. Can we just talk? Dylan McDermott is a fucking horrible therapist. I cannot imagine there is something so broadly disconnected from Dylan McDermott's personal life to his actual like therapy. And like, he can't possibly be a good therapist when he thinks like this with his own marriage. Is like getting so angry that Connie Britton won't forgive him and like return to their relationship to normal and stuff like that. It is so bizarre that a therapist would not understand the grieving period.
Rich, the only person he couldn't fix was himself.
Max, what about you? Like, seeing this, we had our two of our main characters having sex, and then all this shit starts going off the rails to end our pilot. Like, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking that it's been a very long pilot. I'm thinking that you've hit a point now where I would move out. I would just simply move out of the house. I don't care what deal I got on there. Clearly, this realtor can sell it again and again and again. It's a beautiful Tudor on a corner lot. But I'm not staying in this house anymore. If shit's just gone off the rails like this, I'm out. I'm gone. I'm done.
Yeah, and we didn't even cross over into the housekeeper changing back and forth from her present to 1978 self, I guess. If I have to, imagine.
And that's only Ben who sees that. Okay, so what I will say is I think that this is really where you are going to get the full scope of your narrators aren't reliable and your timelines aren't reliable, and you don't really look. Obviously, we know as advanced TV scholars that is not Dylan McDermott, is not Ben in the gimp suit, but there is a plausible ability to say that, is this timeline accurate the way we're seeing it? Is it Ben standing over the stove in real time? Like we know he threw the suit out. We saw it, but you could see from a character's POV how you don't know what's happening in real time here, and that's always fascinating to me.
So we get one last big reveal, and that is that in this, Max, as you said, we can't trust the timelines. We can't trust the narrators. It appears that Connie Britton somehow magically knows she is pregnant, which we, as the audience, are smart enough, as we've said, to realize that that's probably not Dylan McDermott's baby that is in there.
You act like it's insane that she knows, but she says she wants Indian food, and it's revealed that she only likes Indian food when she's pregnant. Okay, those are given circumstances.
I must be constantly pregnant, then, I have to say. Well, that's the end.
Geoff is a butter chicken baby.
That's the end of this pilot. But let's talk a little bit more about things that we loved, and maybe we'll talk about some wait a minute moments as well. I would like to start the things that we loved with the most tongue-in-cheek chase scene through Griffith Park Observatory that I have ever seen in my damn life. I instantly knew what park that was when they were running through the back paths and all that stuff. And I was losing my mind because it was so corny, but so perfect at the same time that I was just like, yep, Ryan Murphy, if you made an hour of this, I'd watch the entire hour with like some of the dopey faces that Dylan McDermott was making.
Oh my God.
So we just get some great vantages from overpasses of the 110 freeway, looking at downtown Los Angeles to the general Pasadena, Highland Park areas. Just real representation of Northeast LA and American Horror Stories pilot.
Ryan Murphy loves himself in Arroyo Seco Parkway.
Oh my gosh. Rich, what about you? What were some things that you loved about this pilot?
I know we have talked about it before, and so I'm saying fuck you to the rules, but Jessica Lange is my favorite part of this pilot, hands down. It is giving the most campy possible character of all time. It feels like Sunset Boulevard. It feels like it feels so crazy to have her in this, and it's such a treat. And like, from what I've seen so far, the pilot does not, like, this story does not need her. So there is going to be more happening with her specifically. But my God, Jessica Lange, she could play 7 characters in this show, and I would be thrilled to have her.
Max, what about yourself?
I'm also going to give it to Jessica Lange. I love the conversation between her and Connie Britton the first time in the kitchen, because it feels like characters from 2 different productions talking to each other. And that's just such a real fun dichotomy to have across from each other at the kitchen table. I love the way that she snoops and holds jewelry in the final beats of this show. I love her delivery to Moira of "Don't make me kill you again," a true cliffhanger.
Yep.
And really just, again, a little bit more on the powder keg, burning off on that fuse. I think she does such a great job with the tone of the vintage horror that we're trying to portray. I'm glad that Ryan Murphy was able to convince her to do TV for the first time in a major commitment. And again, when you could get a 2-time Oscar winner to do your show, you get her.
Yeah.
Damn right.
I mean, absolutely extraordinary performance. Let's talk about wait a minute moments. Were there any, like, this is a little bit of a hard one to do wait a minute moments for, because it's supposed to be odd and it's supposed to be shocking and uncomfortable and terrifying. Right. But were there any things that caused you pause in this pilot?
Max, you have one ready to go?
Yeah. So I actually don't like the first cold open. I don't like the 1978 scene. I think that Ryan Murphy, for better or worse, has a habit of really laying stuff on thick early on to set up tones and to set up worlds that we're going to be in. And I think I would have liked this pilot more if we just began with present day Vivian and Ben in, their cross-country home and the troubles they're having from the beginning, and layering it on from there. I think starting it off with, this is going to be weird, this is going to be creepy, this is going to be spooky. Do you get the tone? Do you get it? Do you get it? For me, that's a little bit too much, and I would have liked to have seen a version of this where we could have just let it unspool a little more organically.
Rich, what about yourself?
I completely agree. I have 3 words for my wait a minute moment, and it is screaming is acting. Everything, every dramatic scene, every choice they make, every time, it has to be screaming. All the dramatic moments have to have screaming in them. And I think, like, maybe I'm positive this would have worked on me when I was 21 when this came out, but it was like, it just feels... every choice is just so over the top, and that does play into the campiness of it. But I don't know, do you guys think that campiness was the original intent of the show, or was it or is it just like, no, we want to make this scary?
I think I mentioned this at the beginning a little bit, but just to circle it back, I think that it is sort of the idea of, like, almost matching the tone of horror based off of the decade it was supposed to be in, right? Like, if you think about horror in the 70s and 80s, it was very much that type of, like, murder, and
sleepaway camp kind of shit. Yeah.
Now we're a lot more into the psychological, like, the truly, utterly terrifying, like, the person is in the house type of horror, rather than the, like, hey, the person has a chainsaw and they're right behind you and they walk at a slow casual pace of 2 miles per hour when they are rushing.
Yeah, I have not seen any A24 psychological horror movies that feature Dylan McDermott jacking off into an open window and then crying, and I think that was more prevalent in the 70s.
Yet.
And then for my wait a minute moment, I would like to call out the teachers of whatever fucking high school Violet went to. Because Jesus Christ, where were they? They were nowhere to be found. I know a teacher's job is not to be a security guard, but also at the same time, there's a small amount of responsibility to step in when shit goes off the rails.
Boy, they got that white girl violence down to a T.
Well, we got one more question, boys. It is an in-flight question, and our in-flight question came in from Instagram, and this is a really fun one. We got a couple this week, but I'm tickled by the concept of this. There are so many different versions of American Horror Story that exist out there, but which one, based off of the title alone, is the scariest one? So I'm going to give you the list of these, and you can tell me which one you find the scariest. We have Murder House, Asylum, Coven, Freak Show, Hotel, Roanoke, Cult, Apocalypse, 1984, Double Feature, NYC, and Delicate.
NYC is such a funny choice.
So,
well, if you're conservative, the answer is New York City.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask, which of those 12 different possibilities are you going to pick as the scariest just based off of title alone?
I'm going Asylum. Asylum for me is the scariest possible thing because, number one, you're subject to the American healthcare system. Number two, I don't think there's anything scarier than getting falsely committed to a mental asylum. And that has to be a truly horrifying experience. I don't want to watch that.
Max, what about yourself?
I know myself well, and I'm not cut out for the apocalypse. I don't want to live in nuclear fallout, zombies. Dude, me neither. I wouldn't do it. I'm not interested in it. I don't want to be a part of it. I don't like it.
Yeah, and I'll just say New York City, because have you seen those rent prices? Jesus, that's terrifying in its own.
Jeff said hotel because the Wi-Fi is spotty.
Oh my god! I should have said
TVPL,
hotel.
sponsored by Turkish Airlines. We're covering New York City.
No, in all honesty, I think I would have to be Asylum, right? Speaking about the horrors of the mind and thinking about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and some of those things. There's definitely something there.
You can leave the murder house.
Yeah,
you can leave New York.
Yeah, many people.
Of people. They all wrote Medium articles about it.
But if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. Well, thank you so much for that in-flight question. We'll talk a little bit.
It's up to you, Roanoke.
Let's talk a little bit more about the history of this show. So this show had 12 different versions of the anthology, or 12 different series or seasons, however you want to say it, and 132 episodes. Considering that this was on FX, the numbers are actually pretty impressive as far as the viewership. 3 million viewers on average in the first season, but the show peaked at 4.14 million viewers during its third season on average.
That's pretty solid.
Which, it's really,
that seems
really
big
good
for horror.
Especially for horror, but also I believe Coven was the first season that they had Lady Gaga on as on the show.
She's done two?
Yeah, she's done a couple of them. So let's talk a little bit about awards, because talk about something that's wild. This show has 367 nominations and 142 wins, including 2 Golden Globes, 16 Emmy Awards, but they have never won a surfboard because no surfboards are allowed in the house.
Wait, it has more nominations than it does episodes? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay,
more wins than it has episodes as well.
Damn.
Hold on. A wealthy therapist is moving from the East Coast to Pasadena. I'm pretty sure he would have gotten a surfboard.
That's nowhere near the beach.
So we talked a little bit about it, and we talked a little bit about the Ryan Murphy universe, but this show has expanded. We don't only have American Horror Story, we have American Horror Stories, which are one-off episodes rather than having an entire series. There's
like
also
made for TV movies, basically.
Yeah, there's also American Crime Stories, which are. We had the O.J. Simpson series, and now we just got American Sport Story, which is the Aaron Hernandez, and then Grotesquerie, which just came out as well. So lots of different stuff going on, lots of different American stories. This American story, but
I think I get my bread at the Grotesquerie. Is that
right? Rich, don't worry, you can find all 12 series on a DVD collection pack.
Thank God.
Just in case you were concerned. But that is really this show in its current form. It is constantly expanding and growing and being manipulated into many different forms and versions of stories. But Rich, it is now time for your game of the week.
Hooray. Okay, so because this is already we already had to do a long pilot, I'm going to be merciful and only give 2 questions. This is all about the history of horror TV shows. The first ever horror TV show, a program called The Television Ghost, is a show that began in 1931 and was broadcast on an experimental TV channel out of New York, as well as on the radio. So basically, think about you listening to us on Spotify while also listening or watching us on YouTube, which you should do. The Television Ghost is a series of murder stories told from the perspective of the ghost of the victim. Obviously, since this was before the mass adoption of TV, the entire series is lost. No method of recording. What show did the televised ghost precede on the experimental channel's programming? Is it A, The Adventures of Superman, B, Abbott and Costello, C, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, D, a show from a local piano teacher to simultaneously teach thousands of Americans piano at the same time?
D, piano teacher.
I want it to be D so badly.
It was on right before piano lessons.
Yes!
Yeah!
Yay!
Yay! We're all 1 for 1. Everyone at home is also 1 for 1. All right.
And you know a few major chords.
Second question. In the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror series, 2 non-family characters have appeared in every single one. Is it A, Groundskeeper Willie and Principal Skinner, B, Kang and Kodos, C, Itchy and Scratchy, D, Krusty the Clown and Sideshow Bob?
I am going to go with Skinner and Willie.
Jeff?
The one with Sideshow Bob. I zoned out for
Kelsey
like 2
Grammer
seconds.
stays booked and busy. No, it is Kang and Kodos. They are in every single Treehouse of Horror.
All right. Very
Thanks
cool.
for playing Rich's abbreviated game of the week.
Well, Rich, thank you so much for your game of the week. Gentlemen, as this very long flight comes to a land, or it seems like a little bit of a longer one, I have 2 more questions for each of you. And one is based off of the pilot and the pilot alone. Are you going to watch more Murder House? Do you want to find out whose baby that is? Is Maury going to show up and tell us who the baby is? Is Violet going to stick up for herself in school? Is Evan Peters going to discover that, you know, he actually is secretly an X-Men? And are we going to find out if that's Dylan McDermott's butt? Or, and the other question that I have for you is, as we said, there's a lot of American blank stories that are out there. There's a ton of them. We as a society are super duper curious about things that are either recent history, made up history, or history that we don't like talking about that much. Do we feel like we need more of stories like this that are of the made up variety, and maybe more horror stories on television themselves? So, Rich, I'm going to start off with you and those 2 very tough questions.
Okay, personal taste, I'm not watching more. If I am a horror fan, if I'm not a little scaredy cat, I would say, yeah, I'm going more. And I think America wanted more, if I could be so bold. It's also just like, these are incredible actors, and I just like want to see them in something. Question number 2. Let's let Ryan Murphy sleep a little bit. I don't know. I do not know if he's making all these shows of his own volition, or they have him under some kind of like scary Space Jam contract where he's like tied to a giant meteor and he's making all these shows. It is we don't need quite so many things. He doesn't need to have 5 concurrent shows on TV at once. We get the feel. Let's keep up the quality.
Max, what about yourself?
This is a no for me. I was really not feeling this endless layering upon layering to build this twisted web. It kind of gives me the same vibes of that game show on ABC that would be like, from the twisted mind of Ryan Reynolds. It's just like, we get it. You're trying to get me to buy into this being supernatural, and I'm just not feeling it. I also feel like we could maybe pump the brakes on the horror anthology and the real life true crime stuff a little bit. I like Ryan Murphy when he's working in like over the top batshit silly mode. I had a lot of fun when we talked about 911 on this podcast. Oh, yeah. I'm very excited to watch Dr. Odyssey on ABC.
Let's go. I converted, yeah.
I like that vein more than trying to understand the deepest, darkest psyches. This is a pass for me.
So, as far as myself, personal taste, Rich, I am on the same boat as you. I like my TV in a certain way, in a certain manner, and I like to watch TV.
Are you also a little marshmallow when it comes to horror?
I like to watch something that is pleasant before bed, and not something that I'm like, oh, I'll be thinking about that for the next 30 minutes to hour. I need sleep, unlike Ryan Murphy, it seems, as how busy he is. As far as more horror on TV or more stuff like this, I think we're in a very interesting spot that if you were to ask me this question right when the show came out, I would have said, yes, I'm really excited about seeing more horror and more of that form of television, because streaming wasn't what it is now. And I think that I've seen a lot of networks do a really good job. And when I say networks, I am including the Hulus and the Apple TVs and the Netflix of the world, creating enough horror throughout the year that I don't need 12 episodes to be able to get my fill, or have that series that I need to go to. Seeing the transition of American Horror Stories into stories, I think has been a really, really smart move, in all honesty, because you can tell some nice compact stories that are really engaging. And yeah, like this spooky season,
movies.
Yeah, this spooky season, I can't wait. There's a lot of spooky shit that's coming out, and I'm gonna watch it and I'm gonna enjoy it. And then I'm gonna have some Hocus Pocus thrown in there and Halloween Town thrown in there as well. Which technically we can talk about Halloween Town because that's a TV movie, which falls under our purview as TV pilots. But with our plane landed and the seatbelt sign off, before we go, where can folks find you two gentlemen?
You can find me crushing Indian food for dinner tonight and on all things social media at Maxwell Singh. You can find original sketch comedy for myself and Rich over on TikTok at Dad Wagon Comedy.
You can find me carefully arranging my heads in a jar, and you can also find me on Instagram at Damn That's Rich.
And you can also find me cooking naked in front of my flame stove. But if you're looking for me on
flame stove,
yeah, we're not centralizing natural gas stoves anymore. Get with it, Max. It's electric or nothing.
It's my lovely gas stove with flames. But if you're looking for me on social media, you can find me at Run Jeff Run. If you're looking for the TV Pilot's License, you can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also watch our smiling faces on YouTube. Find us on social media as well at TV Pilot's License. If you have a question for the show or maybe for our next episode, you can shoot us an in-flight question by going to tvpilotslicense.com or give us a call at 213-290-1713. I'm going to cut that. Make sure to watch out for our Instagram for some of the stuff that we have coming up. But with the plane landed and the seatbelt sign off, we look forward to flying the bright skies of the TV world with you again soon. And until then...
Want to listen to Morrissey?
We got the bats, we got the bats, we got the bats.
God.